and welcome to my first ever proper walkthrough on my paintings. This is the final product, so if you're wondering how I made this, you'll find out soon. First of all, the usual disclaimer, this is just a poor description of my process of drawing. I'm by no means a professional, so don't feel the need to do everything I say. Also, have fun. This video will cover the entire process from start to finish, and there will be skip marks in the description for those who don't care. Also, for creeps who like to watch the process in real time, there will be a video link down below. I will also link the work file, so if you happen to have a Photoshop, you can click through the layers. Also, if you want to know more about the tools I'm using and basic painting tips, maybe check out my previous video, where I explain stuff in more detail. It all starts with an idea, which consists of three fundamental things: the character, the setting, and the mood. The character is this good boy, Scout. For the setting, I wanted something simple, so I chose the ocean, and the mood is the fun part. I wanted this painting to be calm, with a sprinkle of melancholy, and the character zoning out and letting the tide to flood him. Later, I also put eternity sign above his head, because sometimes when you're downloading lags, it says you need to wait infinite minutes. So I use this as a support of the zoning out and stillness. For the colors, my inspiration was this greenish water and sunrise, when the sky is lightening up but everything else is still in darkness. I recommend making mood boards before you paint because it kinda helps you to visualize your ideas. After you decided what you wanna do, it's time for thumbnailing. Still not making the actual painting. Thumbnails are basically previews of your drawings where you get to quickly put ideas down on paper and see what works. It's faster than making detailed sketches over and over again, and usually what looks good on a thumbnail will work in full painting as well. And now it's finally time to sketch. If you're cool and talented, you should be able to get it done on the first try, but if you're like me, you'll spend 30 minutes just sketching and erasing the same thing until it's mediocre good. I could edit this out, but I want you to see the struggle. I then make another sketch on a new layer, and I try to make it as clean as possible because that will help me later in the rendering process. There's also a lot of fixing and tweaking involved. After the sketch is done, it's time for the coloring. I color background and character separately, however it's important to make them look like they belong to the same environment. I start with the flat colors of the character and then move on to the background. It's better to have the background colored and shaded before you shade the character, since the character's shadows are determined by the environment and not the other way around. At least that's what I learned from my past mistakes. When shading a character, I start with general adjustment layers to make the colors of the character match the background, and after that I begin the first layer of shading and highlights. I pick the colors from my background or pick them from the slider on the upper right. In the past I used tons of blending modes like multiply to shade, but now it's set on normal and it's just purely about me choosing every individual color. It's more fun and it gives me more freedom, I guess. I try to be loose and leave room for changes because that will be fixed in the rendering step. I won't go much into the theory behind shading because, as I mentioned, I'm not a professional and I'm sure some YouTube shadow guru will explain it better. However, when I shade, I try to think about the light sources and the light reflected from objects onto the character. The main source of light comes from behind, meaning there won't be any drastic light on the character, because he's completely in shadow. The reflected light comes from the sea, which is gonna have a bluish hue, so with that in mind, I try to shade. After basic shading, it's time for tons of filters, adjustments and playing with the colors. I check the contrast and sometimes I add textures. I didn't like how blue Scout looked, so I tried to fix that. Also, I hated the browns. They just looked incredibly off. And the sea itself was more purple blue than green blue, and I got the genius idea to add another texture of this iridescent water, which made the water look so much better. Generally, this step takes up an immense amount of time, but it's what makes my colors somewhat okay, you could say. If you struggle with color palettes, here's a small breakdown of my color choices. I like to keep my colors limited, meaning I don't use the full spectrum, but only a couple of hues. In this painting, the main background color is blue, or more precisely cyan, but dark. And the complementary color is this pinkish orange. I think the shade is called peach, who knows. And then there is the magenta color, which only supports the peach. So when coloring the character, the tank top, knees, eye and elbows match the peach group. The brown is in fact dark orange, so I guess that fits there as well, but I struggled with that one a lot. Most shadows belong to the magenta group, and then the white fur is actually desaturated light blue, and the hair is cyan, matching the blue group. Black shorts are just black, they match nothing, but they help with contrast. So the whole painting is just 3 colors with different shades. I recommend studying color theory, and I'll try to find a couple of links of my favorite tutorials. But don't forget to experiment with colors as well. In this stage, the drawing is ready for the rendering, the tedious part where you blend and sharpen and lose your mind. I already explained the rendering principles in the previous video, so if you saw it, you should have a sense of what I'm doing here. It gives your painting the final form, but takes forever, and it causes my hands to hurt a lot actually. Anyway, I always render background first and then the characters. Also, remember the texture I added to the water? I will now paint over it so no one would suspect I was lazy and used a stock photo to do magic for me. I actually lost a lot of water drawing footage here, so my apologies. And while you're enjoying this rendering process, I will present a couple of tips to save your time. First, never zoom in more than 100%. You can do it, but only in case of emergency. No one will look at your drawing zoomed in, except everyone after I said this, so it's pointless to fiddle with details no one can see when zoomed out, okay? Another time-saving tip, be lazy. Don't blend everything perfectly or make every shape perfect. Keeping it a bit rough gives it a cool texture and saves you a couple of hours you can be doing something else. And final time-saving tip is to keep rendering on a separate layer. This way, if you mess up, you can erase it and start over again, as I did when rendering the tail. Also, you can see how much you drifted away from the original sketch and coloring, which is pretty cool. So this is how it looks after rendering, and now it's time for another round of filters and adjustments. The final step for me is to add a filter called Sharpen, and I also like to use one called Find Edges, I think, to make my paintings look sharper. And I'm done with live painting and this walkthrough. I hope you found this helpful. Feel free to try my style, send me the results, or if you have questions, send me those as well. Next video will be about the filters and ways to cheat art, so stay tuned. Maybe subscribe if you want my future stuff in your subscription box, and take care. Goodbye.